Hello and welcome to Solving the Supply Chain Last Mile Delivery Logistics Puzzle. Today's Smart Panel is sponsored by OneRail and produced by SmartBrief. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from SmartBrief, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this fireside chat style conversation. Now, before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping items that are going to help you get the most out of this session. So first off, let's talk questions. We want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. The Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. So a browser refresh will fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues. But if that doesn't work, just let us know in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Okay, next, handouts. So in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. I'd especially like to call your attention to a one-page overview of OneRail and a guide for evaluating last mile delivery software. So I encourage you to access those resources now and share them with your friends and colleagues. Now, I'm sure you also noticed the prize icon there. At the end of this webinar event, we'll be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. So, of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. The official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section. Just scroll down to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. And with that, let's get into today's panel discussion. So, inflation, the economy's overall state, and labor shortages have all affected supply chain operations. But as we've moved through 2024, a focus on on-time performance has taken hold. And so the biggest puzzle piece still to solve is last mile delivery. Today, we're going to cover things like how supply chain managers can resolve the last mile delivery conundrum, the best last mile strategies, the role sustainability and efficiency play in operations, and how customer service is evolving and driving decisions. And who better to illuminate those challenges than our guest today? We have OneRail founder and CEO, Bill Catania. Bill is a startup entrepreneur focused on developing and commercializing real-time technology networks. OneRail is a leading omnichannel fulfillment solution pairing best-in-class software with logistics as a service. They're dedicated to providing dependability and speed to help businesses meet their delivery promise. So for scale, OneRail has a real-time connected network of 12 million drivers. And OneRail, of course, isn't Bill's only retail startup. He also founded digital coupon pioneer M.Dot Network, the first of its kind retail point of sale to cloud transaction engine, powering the real-time redemption of digital coupons at grocery checkouts throughout North America. So, Bill, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, so happy to have you here. Now, I said a little bit about OneRail, but could you tell the audience just a little bit more about the company and what you do?
Yeah, OneRail is a last mile omni-channel fulfillment solution. And what that means is we give our customers capabilities to really execute a lot of the things that Amazon have perfected, that they've invested over $100 billion in developing. We give them those capabilities, leveraging a lot of their assets, their warehouses, their stores, and unlocking that with our transportation network, our technology, and our team that provides support. So think about it as almost an Amazon in the box type solution, where you can offer same day fulfillment from store in 30 minutes or less, same day, anytime, next day, but also orchestrate your overall shipping strategy, whether it be parcel ship from store, warehouse, LTL. It really is the unlock to being able to put the customer at the center of your universe.
Very cool. All right, great. Well, that obviously dovetails perfectly into what we're talking about. So let's set the stage. What are the biggest barriers facing supply chain managers when it comes to that last mile delivery?
Just everything. So okay. That's a vague answer, but what they're facing are a lot of challenges. I mean, if I had to break it down, there's really four things that are the biggest challenges that many things can kind of roll up to. One is technology. The concept of last mile and omni-channel orchestration is a relatively new thing, right? You have decades old TMS solutions that have been in place. You have decades old OMS solutions that have been in place, and somehow they need to figure out what's the best way dynamically to fulfill product to a customer so that the customer can have flexible shipping solutions, low cost or no cost shipping. And notice I said flexible. I didn't say had to be fast. And I think that's a big misnomer. Dependable and when the customer wants their delivery are the two most important things. Fast should be an option, but it doesn't mean it has to be fast. So technology is a big problem. The other is procurement. And now that sounds weird. How is procurement a problem? Many shippers, especially retailers, have gone out with kind of a single or limited carrier strategy. And what we encourage our customers to do is have a multi-carrier strategy. Think of it as having a mutual fund versus a stock. You put all your money in one stock, the stock doesn't do well, you lose money, right? Put all your money in a mutual fund, you have 2,000 stocks, some will go up, some will go down, but you have a much more even performance. So procuring, how you procure your transportation, how to execute a procurement strategy so that you have a multi-carrier focus, and not just for the reason of performance. Think about a retailer like Lowe's Home Improvement, who happens to be one of our customers. We're shipping everything from a gallon of paint to 2,000 or 3,000 pounds of products to a job site for a Lowe's Pro. So how do you have a range of delivery assets that can support virtually any type of delivery speed, weight, cubic inches, etc.? So how you procure has to change. You have to kind of forget how you've done it for 30 years and think about it a little bit differently. The third is process. Things that we're doing. I'm really surprised, and I'm not disappointed. I'm just surprised at how much we lean in with our customers to help them solve store operations sort of re-architecting. So now, let's take a retailer that's maybe pushed everything out the back door of the store in a box truck, for years, scheduled deliveries, but now we're going to do same day. We're going to do it out the front of the store. Think about all the challenges that you face, right? And trying to do that across thousands of stores with hundreds of thousands of associates. That's what we're geared up to do. And we help our customers kind of aggregate the best practices across our whole network so they can solve those problems easily in the first time. And then lastly, people. If you're going to execute a true kind of last mile omni-channel strategy, fulfill from store, expedited, same day, you have to think about this more as a shopper marketing exercise and less of a logistics concern. And I think what we do is we take the logistics components and make them easy so that our customers can achieve their shopper marketing goals. At the end of the day, this is a shopper marketing exercise. I think Amazon proved us right on that.
Okay, so it was technology and the three Ps: procurement, process, and people. I like that.
And here's the other thing. So if you can do those things, you can solve for the fourth P, which is price. If you can do all those things right, you can actually offer an affordable last mile solution, which I think the unit economics of last mile have been upside down forever, right? They really, you hear a lot about retailers subsidizing and, not really being able to contemplate margin versus fulfillment cost. And then there's retailers that make delivery available at too high of a cost for the customer. The customer says, I expect free delivery because Amazon gives me free delivery, or I pay Prime once a year and I get all the benefit out of that. So that fourth P, super important. And it's an output of those three inputs or four inputs.
Yeah. No, great point. So what about on the other side? What are some of the biggest opportunities around, last mile delivery?
Well, I think the retailers that have done a fabulous job, kind of in the early days, have demonstrated that you can win the customer, right? That's the opportunity. The opportunity is win the customer. And you think about retail evolution and what Sears did. Think about Sears and the impact that Sears had on retail in the mid-1900s. They had to literally re-architect the roads in Chicago to bring the mail in and out of the Sears building. That's how much disruption that Sears caused to retail. And they did a good job putting the customer first in the early days. Amazon creates the next wave or revolution of putting a customer even more in the center of the universe. And they've done a good job of that. So I think that the answers to the test have already been given out, right? Give your customers flexible options, wide assortment, low cost. That's the opportunity, is to win the customer. And if you can provide large assortment, low cost, flexible shipping, you win. And to me, that is the opportunity. Like I could list a whole bunch of opportunities, but at the end of the day, the word omni-channel, I go back to 2013, like that's 50 years ago in technology years, kind of like dog years, but technology years. I was on stage speaking at the NCR annual event about digital couponing and shopper marketing. And omni-channel was like the buzzword then. And what I learned between 2013 and when I started this company was, you can talk all you want about it. You can talk about designing an omni-channel marketing platform, which is actually a path that I started going down before I started this company. But that's not going to do anything for you unless you can actually fulfill the promise and give the customer the flexibility and optionality they need. And that's why I did this, was we're going to solve this problem. This is the problem that I think is the bigger problem, not how to connect all the touch points for an omni-channel marketing strategy. Marketing is worthless if you can't execute.
Yeah, and one other thing that I wanted to ask, just kind of your view on being sort of like just in the center of the industry, just some of the buzzwords that are out there around, last mile delivery, like, crowdsourced delivery services, like a DoorDash, and then drone technology gets talked about all the time, and sort of that last mile, micro fulfillment centers. Any of those have sort of legs for organizations?
They certainly do. They're all tools, though. I think what I've learned is, going out and starting this company and raising capital, I have to be accountable to the capital markets, and not like a public company does, but probably in some ways even more rigid in terms of what the expectations are, being an earlier stage company. And at the end of the day, we get a lot of questions about, how is drone delivery going to disrupt, One Rail? Well, no. Drone delivery is something we would orchestrate, right? It's a tool. All of those things are tools that a retailer needs to have in their arsenal. We're a huge advocate for crowdsourced delivery. And if you look at our model, the reason it works is we're crowdsourcing supply and demand at the same time. So we're crowdsourcing demand from our network of retailers: Lowe's, Advance, Tractor Supply, Signet Jewelers, which owns many different jewelry brands like Kay and Zales, wholesalers like Ferguson Industries, American Tire Distributors, PepsiCo as a product manufacturer. All that demand is in one pool, and we connect it with crowdsourced supply. Our crowdsourced supply, you referenced it at the beginning of the call, are entirely our courier network of about 1,000 networks. So it's a network of networks: DoorDash, Uber, Flipkart, GoShare, Freight. So when you can crowdsource supply and demand simultaneously, you can create unit economic advantage really for the shipper. It's also good for the carrier, because the carrier now is going to get business that they wouldn't have gotten before by plugging into one company, which is us. So we kind of sit at the center, the crossroads of supply and demand. That's really what we're doing. So yes, crowdsourcing is absolutely more than a buzzword. It really works. It's one of the reasons why our company continues to grow at over 100% a year, and we expect to again the next year. And then micro fulfillment is something that I think is underutilized, but I think the reason it's underutilized is there hasn't been enough efficiency yet, whether it be a wholesaler or a retailer, to really understand how to leverage micro fulfillment. There's some companies that have done a great job with it, but I think it's still a little bit out there on the roadmap. Drone delivery. There's a massive need for drone delivery, especially in healthcare. You have mission critical deliveries and you're in the middle of a city and it's a 30-minute drive to go a tenth of a mile, but you could dispatch a drone in 5 minutes to get a life-saving medication, or perhaps it's even, something more sensitive like live tissue. I mean, there's real serious implications to that. So it also helps with the density issue when you start thinking about deliveries in a rural area. If you could dispatch a drone instead of a vehicle to a delivery, in rural Wyoming, that potentially could have, favorable unit economics versus deploying a truck that, is going to drive 60 miles one way to deliver something that might not be worth $60. So those are all, they do get treated as buzzwords, but I think the problem is some people idealize them as the end all be all, right? The easy button. And I'm here to tell you, there's no single easy button to fixing every problem to compete on par with, again, an Amazon, a Walmart, who's done an exceptional job as a retailer, but they've also invested billions of dollars. Who can do that?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point of just positioning them as tools, that fill a niche, and then, you need other tools in the toolbox.
The ultimate tool is 3D printing. It makes the whole first and second mile or first and middle mile go away, right? You don't even need first and middle mile. If you could get 3D printing in the home, you don't even need last mile. So if you want to disrupt one rail, just deploy 3D printing in every home in America, so you could print whatever you need, and it would obsolete a lot of things.
So One Rail's been at the forefront of last mile delivery solutions. Can you share how the company is leveraging some technology such as AI, cloud computing, and data analytics to address the complexities of that last mile delivery?
Yeah, I mean, we realized early on, the first iteration of One Rail was not what you see here today. We were a tech connected courier, and that tech connected courier was called Zapped. And we were a lot like some of the other tech connected couriers. We had an app. It was consumer facing. We had to go recruit drivers. So we learned the hard way. That's a very challenging use case. Again, if unit economic advantage lies within matching supply and demand, how do you ever get to an efficient point without losing hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So we realized we needed to become One Rail so that we could become, a lot more efficient at aggregating supply and demand. So to do that, we needed technology. And the only way you can do that is technology. So our technology, we think of it as an operating system. It's called OmniPoint for a reason. It's an omni-channel enablement solution, and it is the single point you need to be able to.
We just lost Bill there for a second. Oh, you're back. Okay, great.
Yeah, where did you?
Yeah, you just kind of winked out, and then you were right back. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So, what I was saying is our technology, our platform is called OmniPoint, and OmniPoint sits at the center of supply and demand. And every order from our shippers flows into OmniPoint. And then what the platform is doing is, based on an algorithm, based on machine learning and AI, we're dispatching to couriers based on their historical performance. So think of it like a credit score for couriers. We know in Atlanta, Georgia, between 11 a.m. and noon for a 30-minute delivery that's less than 50 pounds and going to go less than 10 miles, we have a ranking, 1 through 20 of all the couriers in our network, and we dispatch it to number 1 first. And they only have 2 minutes to accept it. If they don't accept it, it goes to number 2. This all happens automatically, and it's happening across 400 cities at the same time. Now, when we started this platform, Scott, it didn't have AI. It was not an AI-driven solution. It was a digital dispatch where we had a human that would see the order come in, and they would select from a drop-down list which courier we would use in a city. And we used to manage 80 deliveries a day for Menards Home Improvement with 1 employee. And thankfully, we only were doing 300 or 400 deliveries a day at that point. Today, 1 person on our team, they don't dispatch anything because it's all AI automatic dispatch. 1 person can oversee 3,000 deliveries a day. We'd have over 2,000 employees dispatching deliveries today if we didn't implement AI.
Oh, wow.
And to me, that's a really compelling statement. And now we're starting to utilize AI around proof of delivery. Think about a wholesaler like Advanced Auto Parts. They're sending parts to various repair shops, 250,000 repair shops across the country. We have the ability now to analyze a proof of delivery at an 88% accuracy to determine if that item was really delivered or not, which has big implications if maybe one of those repair shops say they didn't get their items. But a human doesn't have to look at it. That's the point, is we can do that validation without a human. So we've leveraged AI a lot. About a year ago, we appointed our first EVP of data science and AI. His name's David Dashler. He was our first CTO, and he's now built out a team. When we engage with a big customer, we actually give them some dedicated cycles with our data science and AI team so that we can start to understand how to lower their delivery rates.
That's one of the best use cases I've heard so far for AI. I mean, everybody's talking about it, and the business cases are obvious. But I mean, what you said about how many employees you would need to do what you're doing now, that's incredible.
But much like the whole solution, probably the biggest compliment I've ever received was from a guy named Bill Hancock. Bill is the chief supply chain officer at US Foods, which is one of our customers. And Bill did a diligence call with one of our new investors a couple of years ago. And he said, yeah, Bill, I told him, he was telling me, Bill to Bill, that he told the investors that OneRail was a solution that was built to solve a problem. It wasn't a solution looking for a problem. So us developing this AI machine learning in version 1 of our true platform, it wasn't because we wanted to go out and dazzle the markets by saying AI. It's because we had to. It's because we couldn't possibly scale and have a real business if we didn't.
So let's move on to sustainability. That's a critical focus for supply chain managers. How can companies balance the need for eco-friendly practices and last mile delivery with that demand for, that constant demand for fast and more reliable service?
Yeah, so it all starts with the platform that we've built is designed to optimize cost. So it can optimize cost by reducing and or eliminating miles. So an example of eliminating miles would be, instead of running 5 hotshot deliveries, and I'm sure everybody probably that's tuning in knows what a hotshot is. It's going directly from store to customer with no other stop in between. It's an ASAP delivery is what we call it. So 5 hotshots is going to burn, 5 discrete paths. Where if you could batch, and basically instead of running 5 hotshots, you could run a 5-stop route, you're saving sometimes 30-40% on mileage. So that has a profound impact. The platform is designed to do that. That's one of the things it's designed to do. But there's another way you can optimize too. We're finding, it starts with the carriers. There's a lot of carriers out there that have been progressive, and they've actually invested in electric fleets or low carbon fleets. So when we sign a contract with a new carrier to do deliveries for us, one of the things that we note, do you have electric or low carbon vehicles? Because we have customers that have asked us, hey, we want our deliveries to be prioritized, to be matched only to electric or low carbon. And then if there is no match, in other words, there's no electric or low carbon vehicles in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which there may or may not be, then it's going to go to a traditional courier with a gas aspirated engine. So that's a couple of use cases, practical use cases, and we're seeing more and more private fleets, retailers that have their own internal fleets, wholesalers, product manufacturers make that investment. American Tire Distributors has made an investment in electric fleet. So right now, I think the world is evolving. It's going to take a little bit of time for that to all reach some level of meaningful scale. But yes, we can do it. It really is the limitation of the network that's out there. And there just isn't enough electric. So right now, the primary focus is reducing miles, eliminating miles.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. Switching gears a little bit, I wanted to talk a little bit about dynamic fulfillment network. And before we do that, I wonder if you could just kind of give us a an explanation of the concept. Just
Yeah. So again, our journey has been interesting. We've kind of had three stages here. The first stage was, hey, we're going to go be a tech connected courier and learn a bunch of stuff. And we did. And we learned just how hard it is to be a tech connected courier. If I have empathy for anybody, it's the couriers and the carriers. It's hard, really hard. So we did that. But then we evolved to become OneRail. We built our platform, our omni-channel OmniPoint platform. We went out and aggregated this network of 12 million drivers. We have a team of 50 people, 66 people now, actually, that sit over the top of all of our deliveries that manage exceptions. The next phase of that evolution just happened. We acquired a company called OrderBot. And OrderBot is an order management solution, order and inventory management. They serve Staples Canada nationally, PetSense here in the United States. And what we realized was there's a huge gap upstream in the order management process. And the reason that gap exists, a lot of the legacy order management systems are very static. Obviously the opposite, right, of dynamic. So the way they work, if you're in a browsing session with a retailer, you have a discrete zip code where you sit. That zip code then relates to a store. The inventory you see is within that store, but there may be 20 other stores around you within a 30-mile radius. You can't see that inventory. So now imagine if I'm a retailer and that one store only has 9 of 10 items, I have to tell the customer now, we only have 9 of 10 items. You can only get 9 items today. Now that creates an option. I can have something parcel shipped in. I could potentially have the customer go pick it up at another store location, or the customer just says, the heck with it. I'm just going to abandon my cart. Those are not good options. None of those are good options. So what we've done, the reason we bought OrderBot was to couple the capability of understanding, order management and transportation in the same transaction. So imagine if I'm a customer now, I can have a browsing session. It's not tethered to my local store based on a zip code. I can see all 20 stores simultaneously. The retailer basically then passes that data off to us of every store that has order in full. And then in real time, we can pick a store that's further away. Maybe it's 2 miles further and it's going to cost an extra $3, but we can deliver the whole order same day. Versus in that static situation, the retailer is basically saying, hey, I'm defaulting to the closest store to the customer. The theory was that's going to be the lowest cost store to fulfill from. The answer is it's really not the lowest cost fulfillment solution, because what's the cost of an abandoned cart? What's the cost of a $20 parcel shipment when you could have spent $2 more to pick it at a different store? So imagine, Scott, this is a triangulation of 3 things: consumer, inventory, and transportation, all simultaneously, like a credit card payment happening in milliseconds. That's dynamic fulfillment.
Very cool. Another thing, let's talk about reverse logistics. So, how can companies effectively manage returns?
That's a loaded question. And for a lot of reasons, I think there's really not been a dominant return solution emerge. I think the first way that I would answer that question is returns are very similar to last mile in that there's a lot of types of returns, right? When I say last mile, if I had a room of 1,000 people, there's going to be 1,000 visions of what last mile means. Some people thinks it just means DoorDash and marketplaces. Some people might think it means some of those 15-minute delivery companies, a lot of which failed in Europe, like Gorillas and others, Joker, those things flamed out. You can't do 15-minute delivery at a rate the customer wants to pay. And then they think FedEx and UPS, right? So when I say returns, same thing, 1,000 different opinions of what returns mean. I think where we're headed, is to have, again, flexibility is the key. If I'm a retailer and the gross margin on an item is less than 20%, am I going to dispatch a driver to go pick that up from a customer? Probably not, right? Probably better off letting them leverage a returns network. So companies like Inmar, who is a partner of ours, have built an amazing last mile returns network. You can go to Kohl's just like you do for Amazon and drop something off. It's a great network. There's different pieces of that whole solution that you need to have so you can have flexibility. So return network is part of it. A proper RMA process to give the customer the ability to print a label to get to a disposition point is another key component. Having a flexible network like OneRail in place is a piece of it. And I think the problem is it's such a rule, kind of think of it as rule driven requirement, because no two returns are the same. You have a couch from Wayfair and you have a garment, and we know a lot of people over order just to see which ones they like the best. That makes things a lot more challenging too. So I don't know if I'm answering your question as concisely as maybe you or the audience would like, but the reality is returns are still ways off. I think we're still in a mode of making things go forward the right way. I think there's a lot of progress around returns, but I think you'll see returns over the next 3 to 5 years become a bigger priority. Now that I think a lot of the last mile problems are getting solved.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how should supply chain managers adapt their last mile delivery strategies to meet customers' changing demands while maintaining high levels of customer satisfaction?
Well, it really comes down to they have to be able to take control. And I think a big problem that I've seen for a lot of reasons, I'm going to bring it back to the top, because they didn't have the right technology. The example of a static OMS fulfillment versus dynamic fulfillment. The concept of trying to use a TMS solution to do last mile fulfill from store. Good luck with that. That's how we emerged, because TMS solutions don't solve that problem. It's static, just like the OMS. Zip code equals carrier, zip code equals carrier. How do you architect that so that it can go 30 minutes or next day or scheduled? How do you do that so that it can select the right carrier or courier, in the right place at the right time based on their demand cycle? You can't. So I think if I'm a supply chain manager, if I want to put my customer first, I absolutely must have the right technology stack. And I think in a lot of cases, a lot of customers that we encounter, supply chain managers, are a little overwhelmed because there's a lot of interconnected dynamics between these platforms. And now we're talking about platforms I've never heard of. What is an omni-channel orchestration platform? What does that do? So part of it is education. The other thing I'll say, and I'm going to modify, if I'm allowed, modify the question a little bit. If I'm a supply chain manager, I think one of the biggest challenges I have is learning how to be more cross-functional. Supply chain managers and transportation managers have worked in silos for a long time because it just wasn't thought of as strategically as it is today. The good news for supply chain and transportation managers should be that your job is now more strategic than ever. Chief supply chain officers, a lot of times were relegated to reporting to a COO, not the CEO. Now you're seeing chief supply chain officers report to the CEO, and for a damn good reason. So I think it starts with, if I'm a supply chain manager, I need to embrace the fact that my job is more strategic. And in our biggest, most successful customer engagements, we see this being very, very cross-functional. Store operations gets involved, tech, chief digital officer, marketing, transportation. Chief supply chain officer typically has oversight over transportation. So it's really all these things playing into it. But that's how they need to adapt how they think about the org and how it all has to come together if they really want to transform. And that's probably the biggest question. Do they want to transform, or do they want to put a Band-Aid on it? Because there's ways to put a Band-Aid on it. There's ways to inch up on it. You don't have to, go through a 2-3 year transformation to be successful. But I think that's one of the bigger questions that they need to ask around that adaptation. And again, the right technology, the right carrier procurement strategy, those two things alone can put the customer at the center of the universe. The capacity's there. Um, so how do you take control? You take control by installing the right technology, finding the right partner, designing the SLAs that meet your customers' needs and service requirements. And then you're in control and you have that flexibility.
All right, great. Hey, we had a couple of questions come in from the audience here. One came in from Melvin, who's asking, does OneRail have its own delivery force, or is everyone a third party driver employed by the courier entities?
Yeah, great question. So I'm just going to bring up a slide here. So our solution has three components: OmniPoint platform, which we've talked about. The second component is where we're crowdsourcing supply. And the answer is we don't own a truck, right? We're doing 260,000 deliveries a day. We don't own a truck. Only in 2024 can you do that, I guess. But we are a network of networks. So what that means is we have contracts with 1,000 carriers. Each of those carriers have between 1 and 1 million drivers. We have some huge networks like Uber and DoorDash, and we have some small mom and pops, that are operating a couple trucks. And that's really what's great about, I think, what we've built is that we've been really, I think, very helpful to some of these smaller carriers that may never see volume from these Fortune 50 companies. But what we're doing, instead of managing drivers, we made a big decision to manage entities. So we have a logistics partner success team of 8 people. All they do are build relationships with our logistics providers and then have weekly kind of check-ins on quality with the top, with the highest volume providers. They all get a report card every week of SLA compliance, what they need to work on by market. And that's how we do it. We manage it by data. We're managing the outputs of a delivery. And then that's a perpetual cycle of how we manage, to try to kind of coach that courier up to do a better job. And the platform also works, and again, I mentioned kind of the AI component. The platform is going to reduce the volume that's going to a courier that's starting to see, over index on late deliveries or loss runs or other problems that are impacting our customers. So that's happening automatically. And then the human component steps in and, we manage them face to face, virtually, obviously, once a week. So yeah, that's how we do it.
Very cool. Great.
I should note, too,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Something that's really unique, I think, about OneRail, we give our customers one rate card. So if you think about the challenge, if I want to execute a transportation strategy that involves many carriers so that I can increase my quality and lower my cost, that means I have to manage 1,000 rate cards. Like, that's really hard to do. Our technology is key to that. And if I'm a shipper and I use OneRail, I get a OneRail rate card. That's it. You get one rate card. So there's going to be, for us, we have to manage 1,000 rate cards. That's our problem. So we try to make it really easy for our customers to engage with us, get all the capacity they need in one place. Some of them have relationships with couriers. We certainly can onboard those rate cards if they want to maintain those relationships. But that rate card component is really key.
Interesting. Okay. All right, Melvin, thanks for that question. A question from Denise who's wondering, does OneRail provide food traceability data for food being shipped and received?
So what we're doing today around food is, we're working with US Foods, really our first big enterprise customer in the perishable space. And our API has been architected to handle temperature. So we can handle temperature. We can see temperature at all times. That's reportable on the dashboard. It'll throw exception flags when temperatures reach a threshold that's set by the shipper. And then the other thing is we provide complete scan in and scan out capabilities. So that's our chain of custody product. It's called inventory visibility. So when you merge those two things, we can provide scan in and out of a warehouse, in and out of any distribution point, onto a truck, off of a truck. Couple that with temperature control at all times, and you have you really have, I think, a complete solution around the chain. Because now, obviously, there's a limitation there. If we're working with a carrier that does not have temperature control, that's a problem. So we would only work with carriers that have a temperature control component that we can report on with our API and make decisions on with our API. So there's always a limitation, right? We're swimming in a world of nuances in supply chain, but I'd be irresponsible not to point that out.
Okay, gotcha. Great. Thanks for the question, Denise. So, Bill, we've talked about a lot here today. If you had to, what are the 2 to 3 key takeaways that you want the audience to leave here today knowing?
Yeah, great question. So it starts with you're in control. We find a lot of customers don't feel like they're in control. I was on a panel, 2 or 3 years ago at Home Delivery World, and it was right immediately after COVID outbreak happened. So there was a lot of sensitivity. And it was interesting because a question came from the audience about the balance of power and balance of control between a shipper and a carrier. And there was an overwhelming feeling at the time because of the driver shortage and a lot of problems that the retailer didn't really feel like they were in control anymore. They felt like the carriers were in control. The reality is both parties need to be in control of what they should be responsible for. And if I'm a retailer, I should be able to architect any experience I want. I shouldn't have to be limited because my carrier only does X, Y, or Z. And to me, it sounds silly, but realize you're in total control. You just need the technology and the tools to be in control. And if you don't have that, it's hard to be in control, but you can be in control. I went through this same dynamic with my last company when we created a digital coupon solution, and we were the first company to aggregate all the coupons into one place for these grocery retailers. And when we told them we were going to do it, they said, "Well, how do you know we can do that?" Because you're the retailer and you can demand it. That's why. And you have leverage. Use your leverage. Take control. So that's one key component, is realize that the tools exist to do that. The second thing is cross-functional is the key to success in last mile. Last mile is highly cross-functional. I was asked this question at a Gartner conference, I think last year. How important is cross-functional collaboration to making supply chain work? I can't emphasize enough. It's a 10 out of 10. If you go into it, thinking in a silo, whether that's a transportation silo or maybe you're a head of strategy and heads of strategy and transformation are naturally cross-functional. Bad example. But if you go into it thinking you can solve the problem as a CMO or a CDO, or for that matter, any kind of verticalized title, you just can't. You must be cross-functional. And that's why we've seen a lot of our biggest opportunities, when I say biggest, successful, come down from heads of strategy and transformation, because they're working that whole organization and they're acting upon the goals and objectives of the board and the C team. So they have the ability to work across different operators in a business to make it work. And if you want to make it work, it has to be cross-functional. And the third takeaway, and this is probably one of the bigger ones, you got to shift the mindset from being a logistics and supply chain problem to being a shopper marketing problem. It's a shopper marketing problem we're solving. The way we solve it is we fix supply chain and logistics problems. At the end of the day, if you think of it, and it doesn't matter if you're a wholesale distributor or a consumer-facing retailer or CPG, you're still, at the end of the day, it's all about customer experience. It's all about winning the heart and the mind of the customer. And to do that, you have a lot of work to do to get your supply chain and logistics stack, your tech stack in order. Again, think differently about how you procure transportation. Be a multi-carrier strategy leader, and take control of that design of that whole experience. It's a shopper marketing problem. So the quicker you can sort of get into that headspace, I think the quicker you can solve the whole problem, which is, how to at least be on par with the market leaders.
Well, Bill, I think that's a great place to leave it. Thank you so much for this conversation. Is really been fascinating, and I mean, it's just such a fast moving industry. Really appreciate you giving us a handle on it. Thanks so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity today. We certainly we're not perfect. We have our perspective from our where we sit, and I feel like we are a lot of times our biggest critic, and our customers are the judge. And we try really hard in these types of moments to just articulate best practices. What's working, what's not working. So thank you for the forum to do that today.
Yep, and thanks for all the insights there on the best practices. All right, take care, Bill. Okay, and we have one last piece of business here before we wrap up, and that's an Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of the $250 Amazon gift card today is Carlos Bates from Georgia. So congratulations to Carlos Bates. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Smart Brief team, I want to thank OneRail and Bill for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for your great questions. That's going to conclude today's event. Have a fantastic rest of your day.